You're listening to Carly Gallagher, naturopath and hormone specialist. This is Help My Hormones, helping you to address hormone dysfunction naturally. Sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode. Hi everyone, and welcome to Help My Hormones. I am joined by Emma Maidment today. Emma is an international yoga and meditation teacher, writer, and speaker. Emma is committed to sharing ways to live an authentic and connected life. As a passionate community creator, intuitive facilitator, and transformative speaker, Emma helps you to connect back to yourself so that you are able to live an empowered, aligned life. Emma writes regularly for Body and Soul and has been featured in Australian Natural Health Magazine, Body and Soul, The Urban List, Broadsheet, news.com.au, and many more. Emma is also an ambassador for Lululemon. Collaboration over competition is one of Emma's core values, and she has co-founded multiple businesses in the health and wellness space. You can currently practice with her online with me via her new virtual yoga, fitness and meditation studio called Flow State Studios. You'll be able to find all those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me today, Emma.
Thanks for having me. It's so always weird hearing your bio repeated. You're like, oh gosh. All things.
I know. And, everyone, may know that I practice a lot of yoga myself, but I did actually go and do teaching of yoga, but I actually prefer to be taught by you.
Oh.
And I think what you missed in your bio notes was you're an amazing singer. And if anyone's in the Melbourne Bayside area and has been to one of your it is amazingly, soul nurturing. Your voice is definitely something to put into your next bio.
Maybe when my album comes out.
I know, I love it. So I'm really, excited to share a little bit about your experiences, in particular around meditation and yoga and the impact that has on hormones. And one of the things that I really encourage in my coaching with my clients is around the whole adrenal aspect of hormone dysfunction, and it's commonly called the HPA-Axis, which is the hypothalamus pituitary axis, which is a big mouth jumble, but essentially it's about how our functions in the brain control our hormone states. And one of the great things that have come out of meditation research is its impact on this HPA-Axis and how that helps to downregulate cortisol production and stress and increase people's performance. And I'm really interested to kind of delve into your experiences around meditation, coaching people in that area, yoga and hormones, and a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, I'm excited to share. Meditation, I think, what you just touched on then, it's so amazing how well researched it's becoming, which is great. I think the yoga practice lags a little bit in that research because a lot of the yogis, like the OG yogis in the Himalayas in India, it's a little bit harder to study them. But meditation, I think you can put someone in a lab and put some stuff on their head and measure what's going on with their brain waves and what's going on with their stress response. And I think that's been what's really caused the rise of people normalizing and becoming interested in meditation. You think a few years ago, meditation was kind of reserved to that kind of weird hippie, big flowy pant wearing, all white kind of image of someone sitting in a lotus pose with a mudra, their straight back. And, now it's in workplaces. I teach workplaces all over the country to meditate. Corporate executives have realized wow, this is actually a game changer for not only my stress levels, but also my creativity and my ability to rest the mind. And then bringing that into its effect on hormones. I think for me, the biggest impact I noticed when I first started meditation, so I came to yoga many, many years before I really dove into meditation. And to be clear, meditation is a part of the bigger practice of yoga, but our modern version, we emphasize more of the bending, stretching, and core. So whilst it was a part of it, it was always the part of every class that I would kind of be internally rolling my eyes like, oh my God, I just don't want to sit here. Like, hurry up, let's get moving. Like, I was just so, I was so resistant to it. Mind you, I was about 19, 20 years old. So a little bit less patient. And it wasn't until I went through a period of getting really physically sick, had a nasty parasite run in, which is kind of a side story, that it forced me to have to slow down. And through that kind of parasite journey, I was working with a naturopath, and she, we'd cleared up my gut. Things were starting to make a really positive step. And I had this horrendous acne, like cystic acne. It was, if you Google me, you'll find pictures. We can put a picture in the show notes so people get the scope of the situation.
The skin was a symptom of the parasite?
So this parasite was kind of coincided. I got the parasite at the time that I came off the pill. And so then I got the parasite, and the focus was on my gut health. And we sort of got to that point where it had been about 12 months of working on my gut health, and it was a lot better. My symptoms had really improved. I wasn't in pain, all that sort of stuff, but my skin hadn't cleared up. And so that's what sort of made her think, okay, I think there's a hormone imbalance or something going on. And so we did a hormone test, and of course it was like, disaster. So she was like, okay, well, this is great. I think you need to get checked to see if there's cysts on your ovaries, which there was. And we need to start looking at, addressing this. And then my naturopath at the time was also studying a PhD in psychology. So she was very onto mental health. And I remember sitting there, I was working full-time in public relations at the time, and I was total type A, very busy, like, okay, I've done yoga and I've done this and I've done that. And I remember sitting in her office, and she said to me, she's like, Em, do you think that you might be stressed? And I was like rocking, like, I'm not stressed. I do yoga. She kind of was like, okay, right. And it just planted something in I was very young, I was about 21, 22, but it just planted something in my kind of psyche and made me think like, stress, what impact would that have on hormones? And so this was kind of around the time that health blogging became a really big thing. And so I jumped online and started looking up, and there's all these bloggers, they weren't even influencers back then, they were bloggers, were sharing kind of these recipes and things like that, talking about hormonal health. And I realized like, whoa, there's actually a connection here between when you're in a state of stress and your hormones. And it doesn't matter how much freaking kale or herbs or whatever you're eating, if your stress levels are here, you're never going to regulate that. It doesn't matter. You could eat amazingly well, or you could eat terribly, and they're still, they're not going to rebalance. And so it sort of opened my eyes, and I read this book called The Woman Code. I can't remember the name of the author, but I'll think of it and we can pop it in the show notes. And it educated me around polycystic ovaries and the effect that diet and lifestyle, the combination of two, had on the symptoms that I was experiencing. And so to segue this back into meditation, I then got into meditation, and I was drawn to it from a point of view of stress. Like, okay, so the research I've done has kind of indicated that, diet is one thing, but lifestyle is a huge indicator. So what is in my lifestyle that's causing me stress? Okay, my job. What is causing me stress about that? I'm very highly strung, and I'm reacting to situations from a stressed place. There's never a moment of just like a calm and considered response. It was very like, and PR is very like that. It's just like kind of go, go, go.
Yeah.
And so, I learned to meditate, and that was kind of this moment where the penny dropped, and I accessed this state of just bliss and being inside of myself. And it was in those kind of moments where my body and my mind were entering in these deep states of rest that I would come out, and suddenly not only was the way in which I approached the world different, but I started seeing huge shifts in my health. And I started to be able to see that wow, actually I can kind of self-regulate, like, and you know, full disclosure, I was taking a lot of herbs and working with a Chinese medicine doctor and, you know, healthcare professionals to do that. But I truly believe that that was one piece of the pie, and the other piece was really, what am I doing to look after my mind and to be able to get to a place where I can be mindful of how I'm responding to a situation and not allowing myself to just instantly be running from a tiger,
Yeah.
which I was doing for years.
Yeah. The tiger analogy, which really is the fight flight analogy.
Yeah.
And you touched on a really important aspect that I think is important to kind of dig deep into, which is this, it's, you know, it doesn't matter if you're eating the right foods, if you're taking amazing herbs, you're working with the best practitioners out there. If there's an element of stress, then you're not addressing the drivers. Those herbs are there to help you adapt and to cope. They're not actually removing the culprit. And I talk to my patients around this three-legged stool analogy, which is, you know, each leg represents, you know, adrenal glands, sex hormones, thyroid hormones. And if there's a wobble in one leg, the whole stool is wobbly. And the one leg that people really find hard to stick into the ground is that adrenal leg, because in the back of our mind, we're thinking, I'm not really stressed. If you ask someone, how are you going? Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. But like you were saying, you had this routine, you were like consistently, you know, juggling life and work and, you know, very, very much in the midst of things. And until you actually took a step back and stopped, you didn't actually recognize that your body was running in this fight, flight, you know, response that was culminating in a huge shift and wobble in that hormonal stool for you. And once you got that stability back in combination with your herbs and your diet, you got the overall benefit. And I think that's really an important thing for people at home watching, is that you can do this yourself. It only takes, what's the research around meditation? You probably know better. Is it like
20 minutes?
20 minutes a day?
20 minutes, boom.
Start with 5 and then you build your way up. And, you know, you probably won't even need me or your herbalist or your Chinese guru or even your doctor. You know, you can do this free in the comfort of your own home without any tools. How did you start meditation, interestingly enough? Did you go and do a course, or did you self-taught yourself?
So I started more of a self-inquiry. I'd been studying yoga. I was lucky enough to start practicing yoga when I was 15. So I'd been kind of exposed to it and interested in sort of, you know, doing my own research into it. And then I'd already done my teacher training as well. And I still wasn't really meditating. Like, we kind of, you touch on it in a teacher training, but it's not, you're not doing a meditation teacher training. So it's just kind of, you know, here's how to guide a breath meditation or whatever. So I sort of had a very surface level understanding of it, but I hadn't had that direct experience. And then I started using apps. So I got really into One Giant Mind app. I did a bit of Headspace and mindfulness and things like that. And I just sort of was drawn to the transcendental technique, and it brought me in, and I ended up learning. So I sort of, for probably about 3.5 years, I was just doing my own thing. I'd read a lot of Deepak Chopra's books, and he has meditation techniques in there, which are really great. And I just kind of, you know, I used apps and different things like that. And I had this daily practice that was really, really amazing. And then, a few years after that, I found a teacher and learnt Vedic meditation, which is a transcendental style of meditation. And that was, I think, for me,
what that style is. Like, what is transcendental meditation for those?
Yeah, so transcendental meditation, the style is basically you work with a mantra or a sound, and you use that sound as a way to access a space of being inside of yourself. So the reason why I gravitated towards that practice is that it doesn't tell you or preach to you that your thoughts are bad or that you have to make your thoughts go away. It's a practice of how do we allow the thoughts to simultaneously be there whilst just effortlessly bringing our attention to the mantra. And so it gives your mind for me, the original pull was like, oh, my mind gets to do something. I get to think the mantra. And then of course you realize that the point isn't to strain and try and think the mantra, but that sound there, and they're bij mantras. So bij means like root. So it's like the root sound that comes from the Sanskrit language, which we use a lot in yoga. And so they don't necessarily mean anything. You're not chanting to a god or to, you know, praying to anyone or whatever. You're just making a sound.
Type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're making a sound.
Like your mantra, or do you do they kind of give you guidance on these are like a selection of mantras that you just resonate with and you try them all, or is there a
so every technique, every I guess lineage has its own little deviation. At the time when I learned Vedic meditation is very much you get your own personalized mantra, and then each year your teacher will give you a more advanced mantra to add on to. And so for me, and like I said, the mantras don't mean anything. They're just sounds. Yeah. So I think they base them around like your age and things like that. So it sounds really like elite and special, but it's just a sound. Super normal. And so you just sort of think that sound to yourself, and it brings you into this state, which is the transcendental state. So you're transcending the mind. So you're not up in the surface level. Like mindfulness, for example, is exactly that. Your mind is full. You're being mindfully, fully present with the sounds and the sensations, and how can you be in all of that? And that's its own beautiful practice that comes from mostly from Buddhism. Whereas transcendental meditation is like, okay, how do we go beyond the mind? How do we access a deeper space of being inside of ourselves? And there's a byproduct of that technique and practice, which is called unstressing, which basically means, I like to use the analogy because I teach meditation as well. I like to use the analogy of the ocean. So if you have the ocean and you have the waves, right? The waves are the surface layer of the thoughts and the busyness, and sometimes it's choppy and sometimes it's more still, but you have the waves. And then if you go down a little bit deeper, you kind of feel the subtlety of, you can be aware of the waves, but it's maybe a little more subtle in your awareness. And then if you put on a scuba diving suit and went all the way down to the depths of the ocean, you find that inner stillness. And then the irony is that the minute that you realize you're there, you're having a thought and you're back to the surface.
Yeah.
So it kind of becomes this beautiful dance of going up and down, but it's all good. It's all part of the process. And there's no such thing as a bad meditation. It's just some meditations will be busier than others because your nervous system is processing a lot of stuff. And it might be stuff that you've stored from, you know, years ago, or from past lifetimes, if you believe in that stuff, or, you know, it's in your body. And it's sort of, I think the practice really taught me of how much we store in the body and how much we actually don't allow that to be released. We usually, I think we live in a culture here that we suppress a lot of things. We're not overly expressive in our emotions and of what's going on. And so for me, meditation became this way of just not even having to analyze or try and go into some, you know, therapy session with myself, just like, whoa, something's coming up and it's creating agitation in the body. And then I just come back to the mantra and go into this beautiful place of being and keep that up and down dance kind of going.
And how long did it take you to kind of find the hormonal balance after, you know, practicing transcendental meditation? Like, you know, just to give people a bit of an understanding of, yeah, it might take a couple of months, or you'll see it in a couple of weeks. Like, what is your, you know?
So I guess my mental health, I felt better from like the very first meditation. I was like, okay, there's clearly, I had this almost euphoric just feeling of being relaxed. And I realized, oh my goodness, I haven't been relaxed. And I was still kind of in that point where I associated, you know, relaxing with a mimosa by the pool, which is lovely and a relaxing thing, but not a sustainable practice every day.
No.
And so
no warmth.
no, maybe a glass of wine now, right? And so it became this sustainable way of accessing that inner space. And meditation, it's kind of like if you want to, you know, if you want to deadlift 100 kilos, most people can't just go and pick up a 100-kilo barbell and deadlift it. It takes progressive time to build up. Meditation's kind of similar. Like you'll have instantly you get that kind of gratifying experience sometimes of like, wow, that was amazing. But it's the benefits is what you see over time. And this is what all the studies that they do on meditation aren't people that meditate once a week. You know, it's people that have a consistent and regular committed meditation practice that see the benefits, because you start to allow the mind to rest. And so for me, hormonally speaking, it probably took a couple of months to start to, there was a lot of stress in my system. It wasn't like I just meditated once and suddenly my skin cleared up and my life was amazing. You know, it was like, it was a dedicated process of showing up each day to meditate, and to watching that play out. Not only did my skin get better, but my digestion improved again, my relationships improved. Like I felt I was in touch with this creative pulse inside of me that I could tap into and find ultimately flow state within that. And I guess I realized that I'd been swimming against the current. You know, I was pushing myself into a career that I didn't really want because I thought I should. I was doing a lot of things like that in my life, rather than just sort of slowing down a little bit and going, where am I being guided? What is actually my truth? Where do I need to be? So there was probably a few months before I started seeing those really amazing health benefits. And then once you start to see that, you start to see really clearly cause and effect. It's like, oh, okay, I don't want to go back to how I was. I want to evolve consciously. So what does this look like? And then what changes do I need to make in my life to make this sustainable, so that, you know, it isn't just something that I do once on a yoga retreat, feel amazing, and then go back to life and the whole thing goes downhill again. Because life is stressful. You know, there's a lot of stressors on us. And I think the thing that I love the most about meditation and the technique is that it doesn't say that like all stress is bad and you need to get rid of stress and renounce the world and just go and live in an ashram and meditate all day. It's kind of like, okay, how do we give ourselves the tools to cope with the stresses of life? So if the stresses are here, our skill set is here, and then boom, we're in an equal place, rather than the stress being up here and our capabilities being down here, and we're trying to kind of claw our way up and never really getting there.
I love that. You know, that it's not going to be for everyone. Everyone's not going to start their meditation journey and then, you know, leave their jobs and then go and become a meditation teacher, which, you know, got them away from the thing that was creating the stress. There's two elements there that I really love. One, you know, research shows that with a dedicated practice around meditation, you become better with coping with stress, better mental clarity, better performance. So you can still have the same job that's creating possibly the wobble in your health, and still be able to come out of that with the benefits. But there's also another part to meditation that I think is beautiful, and that's the spiritual journey, the soul journey. And that in your times of deep reflection meditation, you get the whisperings of your soul, and the creativity bubbles up, and maybe that takes you in a completely different direction that you would never have ever imagined you would be in. And, you know, giving your body the opportunity to sit back and see the big picture, I think is a beautiful part of that. And
I never thought I would be where I am now.
No, I bet you didn't. You know, PR to, you know, meditation, yogi, amazing guru. You know, but, you know, the one thing that I think is worth touching on is the commitment aspect. Nothing is achieved without commitment. And sadly, we can't click our fingers and be done with hormone dysfunction and, you know, bad skin and gut parasites. There requires an element of commitment. There's a personal commitment, a time commitment, maybe even a financial commitment, and a commitment to change. And change usually takes around 21 days in our mind to kind of move from it, you know, just being a bad habit to being a positive change. And I think, you know, people maybe have started on their meditation, and I think you probably see this quite a lot, is they start meditating and then they think, oh, I'm doing it wrong because my head is you know, everyone's like got a different interpretation of what meditation is, and it's very hard to explain what's going in your own head when you meditate, to give people the comfort around it. But I love how you said, you know, you're not going to stop your mind. Your mind doesn't completely stop, and you're going to come up in and out of that ocean analogy, which is so true in my respect anyway with meditation. And if you can only commit to 5 minutes, you know, that's 5 minutes of meditation that you didn't have the day before.
Totally. Or 5 minutes of just deep belly breathing, you know, breathing into your diaphragm, counting in for 4 and out for 6. You do that 3 or 4 times and boom, you've instantly brought your stress levels way down.
Yeah.
And that's something that's free, right? You have your breath, hopefully, at all times, and you don't have to sit in any fancy posture. You can do it laying down, standing up, whatever. But that I think the things that we try and do in our culture is really overcomplicate things. We try and make everything this like big overcomplicated thing. And like what you touched on before, we lack that commitment to something if we don't see the instant. It's like an instant result. Like if I buy this face cream and instantly my wrinkles aren't gone, then I'll buy the next one. You know, we want that. We want everything yesterday. I look back on my gut healing journey, and because I've written about this quite a lot in media, I think I shared it, God, it would have been like 7 years ago, the first article. And every day without fail, I still get someone reaching out to me and saying, I've stumbled across your article. I'm going through this. This is my symptoms. Like, what should I do? And I think it's that you get to that point where you're so desperate. And in those moments of desperation, you do anything. You're like, I'll commit. I'll do the meditation. I'll do the healthy eating. Give me the herbs. And then you'll kind of like feel an improvement. And you're like, nah, I just won't take my herbs today, or I'll skip that naturopath appointment. I won't go and get acupuncture. You know, it took me 7 years to rebalance my gut health. And at the start of that 7-year journey, I was allergic to pretty much everything because my gut was so destroyed. And now I can eat croissants. I can have whatever I want and I don't feel pain. I don't get bloated. It's like, you know, okay, croissants probably aren't the healthiest thing to eat.
No, but so I can totally relate to you on the croissant side. And I think, you know, you don't, when you say commitment, right, you're not, you know, you're committing to the routine. There's always the 20% of the time that you're going to go, I'm going to have
I'm going to have the champagne and whatever.
But it's the overall intention behind it that, which is what we teach, right, in yoga, is like, what is your intention? What is the intention for you, you know, physically, mentally, emotionally, hormonally, want to get out of things? And if you set a really clear intention, then you set your target essentially.
Well, that's the law of attraction, right? Once you start putting something out there, you know, it comes back to you. And I think that when you're able to let go, for me, the big kind of key to all of this was letting go of rigid attachment to outcome. So I would set a goal. You know, by the time I was 25, I wanted to be doing X, Y, Z. And so I'd move in that direction at 100 miles an hour and I'd achieve my goal at all costs. And then I'd kind of get there and be like, I feel empty inside. What's the next thing? Or I would attach to a goal, and if it didn't come out, it would be like the world's worst outcome. You know, I didn't achieve my goal. I'm a failure. All that negative self-talk comes in. And so for me, the moment that I realized, and I think meditation taught me this in a roundabout, more abstract way, of the more that you can, I like to say, like following charm. So I'll, rather than, okay, my clear goal is to do this, I'll say, okay, that feels really charming to me in this moment to move in that direction. And so I'll move in the direction of whatever that goal or thing is, but I'm not attached to the outcome. And so what that enables me to do is be really open to what the journey looks like, and kind of recognize that the journey is the destination, and that once you get somewhere, like once my skin got better, it wasn't like suddenly my whole life was, yay, I've got amazing skin, everything's good now. Of course, then it's like some other thing comes along and you're like, oh, now there's another thing going on with my health or something else in my life. Like there's always going to be stuff. You're not trying to get anywhere. So that, for me, that process of going, okay, this is what I'm working towards, but I'm letting go of what that looks like, because nothing's in our control. And for me, I realized that, you know, very early on in this journey, when I got really into the healthy eating and I was committed to my naturopath, I went so far the other way that the 20% of the fun times was gone. And I was like 100%, like I was the worst dinner guest, you know, is that organic? Is that this? Does that have sugar in it? Like, God, I was a nightmare. And that was causing me way more stress. I wasn't digesting all this ridiculously expensive, beautiful organic food that I'd cooked because I was so stressed about making sure it was perfect and it was in line with what I was supposed to be following to balance my hormones. And, you know, it counteracted the whole thing. And so it brought me back to that place of balance. And what is balance? And, you know, yeah, have the 20% of time where you're doing something that's fun and enjoyable, and then come back to your routine. And they talk about that a lot in Ayurveda, which is the sister science to yoga. Ayurveda means the science of life. And it's it's complex, but very simple in its approach. But it essentially always works on balance. So in Ayurveda, you have 3 doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and they all have sub-doshas, and you can get really into that. But for the overarching kind of concept is the 3 different things. And then what happens is, I remember seeing an Ayurvedic doctor once, and I'd done heaps of this, is like my first insight in, you know, step into Ayurveda, and I'd done all this research, and I was pretty sure that I was a mixture of Vata and Pitta, and done all the online quizzes. And I went in and paid all this money, and he read my pulse, and, you know, he's like, okay, stop eating bananas and take these herbs, and, you know, keep meditating and drink water out of this copper thing. And I was like, okay, cool. So that's great. But which dosha am I? Like, which one? I need you to confirm it. And he just like kind of sat back and shook his head, and he's like, Westerners, you always have to know, too much in the mind. He's like, if I tell you, you're going to go home and you're going to get on the internet and you're going to look up all the things and you're going to control it. He's like, just stop eating so many bananas, take these herbs, keep doing what you're doing. See you later. Yeah. And at the time I was like, man, I just paid you $120. And you told me to stop eating bananas. I already knew that. They don't make me feel good. But I realized it was the Western mind revels in control and in knowledge and in the intellect. And we want to know everything. Like, why exactly? Whereas what he was saying is like, no, you don't need to know that stuff. It's not relevant. You're trying to create balance. And so the point of Ayurveda isn't trying to become one of those doshas. It's trying to be balanced in all 3, and recognizing that nature and the different cycles that we move through with the seasons represent different doshas. And so if it's really windy outside and that Vata wind element is being aggravated, then do something grounding. It's always a balancing practice. It's never you are Vata, therefore that means you have to do this, 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 and this. It's always looking to find balance and effort and ease in this like beautiful symbiotic relationship with you and the world around you, which goes into all areas of life, not only just what food are you eating and how is that harmonizing with your body, but what thoughts are you having, what words are you speaking, what media are you consuming, what meditation and practices are you doing to balance out the stress of life. It looks at the whole and complete system, which is something that I've always found super interesting.
And I, you know, I can see all those people out there who are health fanatics trying to figure out their Ayurvedic, Chinese, and Western on top of each other. Because I know I did that when I studied yoga. That kind of differs though from my Chinese, you know. Yeah. And then I know that in Western medicine, I'm not allowed to have that. And so, you know, such an example of our brains are like all the time trying to figure things out instead of just stopping and just grounding and going, trust that the process. And
well, in the yogic text, they call it the mistake of the intellect. So it's when the intellect goes into overdrive and does exactly that. Goes, well, in China, I'm this, and in Ayurveda, I'm this, and in Western medicine, I'm this. And so, you know, it becomes really contrived rather than allowing the heart to inform the head, because we need the intellect. It keeps us alive. It helps us make smart choices and decisions that we need to live. But if we're intellect dominant, then everything's up here rather than being like, how do we get back into our intuition? How do we feel into the gut and the heart, and what is the body saying? And then how can I inform my intellect and go, hey, intellect, this is what we're feeling. And the intellect goes, cool, I'm going to process that, put it into the categories of information and take this action.
Which is
and that to me is balance.
Journey, right? It's learning to stop thinking. Well, it's not stopping you thinking, but it's so loud in this intellectual part that as we're trying to meditate to stop that from being the overwhelming noise and listen to our heart, our gut, our soul, that's when you start to see, it's clicking now, you know. That was a process.
Totally.
It was like when I found the most benefit when I was meditating the longest and the most successful. And I must admit, I'm one of these people who come in and out of meditation routine a lot. But I found that it was when I'm actually, it was kind of lucid dreaming almost, you're meeting people on your journeys, and that noise that was your intellectual brain that was saying, what are we going to have for dinner tonight? Did I forget to pay that bill? That's when you quieten that down. I think, if you were to give anyone some advice around, maybe the 2 or 3 things that you feel would be a great segue into starting a journey inwardly with meditation and maybe yoga and achieving that kind of balance, what do you say to people?
So I say definitely find a teacher that you resonate with, because having that guide, it's invaluable. So like a guru or a teacher means someone that shows you the light. So it's not someone that's just going to preach at you and tell you what you need to do. If they're a good teacher, they'll give you the tools to figure it out on your own. So you become self-sufficient in your journey. You're not reliant on, I need to go back to that teacher to get that thing. It's like, I'm learning something and I'm applying it. So having a really good teacher and finding a technique or a style of yoga or meditation, whatever it is that you're doing that resonates with you. I think a lot of people just do things because they read the article that says top 10 reasons why you need to do hot yoga. And they're like, oh, I better do that one, rather than going, no, what serves my body? Or I've got heaps and heaps of injuries. Is a vinyasa class the best for me, or should I try Iyengar? Like there's a smorgasbord of offerings. So having the patience to kind of just give things a go, and then really check in with yourself afterwards and feel like, does my body feel different? Did I resonate with that person? You know straight away when you meet someone if you resonate with them or not. So that's always the first one, is find a teacher that you can work with. And then I think the other thing is remembering that all these things are practices. And so it's the nature of it's in the word, it's a practice. Mastery takes, I think it's 10 years, they say, to become a master of something. So that's a long way away. And again, if you're attached to that goal, then you're setting yourself up for failure, in the sense of if you can just go, okay, I'm going to make a commitment to show up. And that's the thing I love about yoga, is that it asks you to show up. You don't have to have the most amazing yoga practice that day, or you might spend the whole class in child's pose, but you showed up. You made that commitment to be there. And I think that's something that's really important. And then the other thing I always tell people is never stop listening to yourself, because there's a lot of noise. Right now you're hearing my opinion and my perspective, and there's a ton of other people on the internet saying a bunch of different things, and you can read a million articles and be swayed in so many different directions, but we all have this internal compass. And if you're able to get a little bit quiet, and there's different, like some people love to journal to get clear. Other people, it's going for a beach walk or running and listening to a bit of Jay-Z and just kind of like pounding the pavement and then feeling that moment of clarity. And clarity is not something you can force, but being able to listen into yourself and allow yourself to guide you. And I think once you do that, you realize perhaps firstly how influenced you are by other people's opinions and thoughts and what's going on, but also how profound it is to have a relationship with yourself and to be able to sit with yourself and almost have that internal dialogue of like, cool, how do we feel about this? Yeah, actually that feels really charming and really good. Let's go back to that class. As opposed to living in the word, you know, this is the fourth thing, eliminate the word should from your vocabulary.
Yes, yes. That's amazing. And I think, you know, if people are still confused about what they're listening to, reading, following, doing, and they need some help, then have a look in the show notes. I've got Emma's website, and I really do encourage everyone to jump onto Flow States and join the myriad of yoga teachers that are joining Emma in her classes, because they're really, and I actually was one of these yogis that thought, I don't really want to do, you know, home-based yoga. I love the energy that I get by practicing with others. But obviously through this pandemic, we've had to adjust. And I actually just love now still being part of a community online, Zoom. I actually still get just as much enjoyment and benefit. And so people can, it's a great way for people to start in yoga without being maybe a little bit shy about joining at a studio level. There's an online practice, you know, that Emma's offering that I really encourage everyone to have a little bit of a dabble in. And if they need to ask you any about meditation, then they know where to find you, and
yeah, reach out.
Join you in one of your upcoming retreats, or, you know, when we're allowed to have retreats again.
Well, yeah. We'll get there.
Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing your journey today, Emma. And I really enjoyed getting some more wisdom from you, because you do impart a lot of it in your yoga classes as well. And it really brings a lot of love to my heart and my soul. So thank you for your time today. And namaste.
Namaste. Thank you for having me.